Hello and welcome to this demo of SAP UI5. In my previous demo, I showed you how to access oData service and get the records inside a table. And in this demo, we are going to stretch a bit more and see how to create, update, and delete records. Now, while I was digging this particular service to create, update, and delete records, there were a couple of scenarios where I was stuck and the documentation was not really helpful. So when you're developing such kind of applications, always remember console is going to be your greatest friend. And with the help of console, you can get into the DOM and see the elements, and you can figure out how SAP UI5 is manipulating those elements to get the data rendered on the screen. So in this video, as and when we go ahead, I'm going to help you learn console and how to look into the DOM and how to identify the elements and get to know what all functions are available for a particular object and stuff like that. So let's get started. We are going to divide this video into two halves. This is going to be a little lengthy video. So the first half will create the UI elements, and in the second half we are going to implement the create, update, and delete methods. So we are going to use this service. It is a public service, which means I can access this from another domain. And this service allows me to read and write. And we are going to access this particular table. It has a few columns into it, and we are going to do all the operations over this table. Now, before you start creating a new application, it is important to know what kind of version is this oData service using. So you can see the version if you get into the network tab, but also you can see the version when you check the metadata. So if you see the metadata, it says that the data version service it is using is 3.0. Another way of checking the version is you click on the document, get into the headers, and it has responded back with this many headers. And you see that the access control allow origin is a star mark, which means I can access this service from a different domain. And the data service version that it is using is 3.0, and that's all about it. So when I went to the wiki page of oData protocol, there are currently 4 versions available, and the version 4 was recently introduced and was released in March 2014. But not many organization or many services will have version 4.0. I have always seen the services using one of these 3. So when you're creating an application, if the version is not matching, then you might get errors. And I will also help you to understand how to debug those kind of errors. So we will copy this URL and keep it ready. And now let's head into Eclipse and quickly create a new project. This is going to be an application project, and we'll name this as products. We're going to use commons library, and we'll name the first view as product view. Hit next, finish, and our view is ready. Now we are not using the shell here because it's going to be really simple. So we are loading the resources, which means that we are referencing this folder which contains all the resource, our views and controllers. And then we are creating an instance of our view. We pass the ID of, we pass an ID, and this is the view name that we have created, which is this. And then we mention the type of the view, and we place that view inside this div. Right. So we are going to create a matrix layout which will contain our buttons. Our buttons will be create, update, and delete. And below that buttons, we will have the table which will display all the rows. And when we do any operation like create or edit, then we are going to show a form which will have all the entries, and then we are going to save the form and see the table getting refreshed with new data. So to create the buttons, we are going to use the matrix layout, and let's get started. Var oMatrix is equal to sap.ui.commons.layout. If you are getting confused where to use what, then you can navigate to JavaScript resources and click on SAPUI5 core libraries, and you can look into SAPUI Commons layout, and here we are going to create a matrix layout, and these are the functions that are available for the matrix layout, right? So let's extend our layout and use the matrix layout. This is going to accept an object, and now we are going to define the matrix layout. The layout needs to be fixed, so we are going to write true, and the width is going to be 300 px, so that each button is of 100 px size, and there are going to be 3 columns. So that is it. This is going to be an object. I forgot the curly braces, right? And now we are going to create a row. So we take oMatrix dot create row, and this is going to accept 3 buttons. So let's write them one by one. New sap.ui.commons.button, and it should have a text which is create, and then on press of this button we are going to call our controller, and we are going to trigger the method create. Oops. Right. Similarly, we are going to create 2 more buttons, and the second button is going to be edit button, so that we can edit a row, and it is going to trigger the edit function. And then we have the delete button. We cannot have a delete method because I think that's reserved, so we're going to name the method as remove, and once that's done we are going to return oMatrix so that it gets visible. And if you want to preview this, we can right click on products, run as web app preview, and it gives me 3 buttons. Now you can see there is a small space in between this. That's because we have not set the size of the button, so we can go ahead and create the width of this button as 100 px. We're going to copy that. This is going to be 100 px and then 100 px. Now if you go ahead and refresh this, all the buttons are 100 px of size and displays it like this. Now below this we are going to create a form, and the form is going to contain all these fields. We are not going to put this field discontinued date because it is not an optional field. It is an optional field. The required fields are denoted as nullable is equal to false, so which means that they cannot be null, but this particular field doesn't have anything of that sort, so we can ignore this. The next thing is we have a date type here, so it is edm.date type. We are just going to hard code a date here, and we are not going to do the conversions in this demo. And the ID, we will create an input box where the ID will not be editable. That's because when we create a new record, the ID needs to be unique. And if you look into the products, products and we give the format as JSON, you'll find each ID is unique, but there is some redundancy in the records, and you will see that the 11th ID is repeating twice. Uh, it shouldn't be the case, but you can ignore this, both the records here, this and this, and also this. So these are the records. The IDs are going to be unique. So we are going to create the ID and we will mark it as non-editable. So let's quickly create the labels and the input boxes for each of this. There are various ways of creating a form. We can use the matrix layout and add the elements over here, but I'm going to use a simple form so that you are aware of that and you know how to create a simple form. So simple form is derived from the layout library, so we are going to mark it as oLayout, and we are going to create sap.ui.layout.form.simpleform, and we are going to give an ID to this form. We'll make it as form ID, and then this form is going to accept an object, and the first field is going to be the title. We want the title to be product maintenance, and then we are going to give our content. It is an array, and inside the content we are going to place the labels. So let's start with ID, new sap.ui.commons.label. So the text of this label is going to be ID, and next we are going to create a text field, but the text field in this case is going to be non-editable. So new sap.ui.commons.text field, we give an ID to this text field, ID. So I have named the ID as ID because this is going to be the ID text box, and then we set the width of this to be 200 px, and this is not going to be editable. Right now we are going to copy these two lines and we're going to paste a couple of them over here. So we don't need this field because by default editable is true, so we can remove those fields from here. And the next field is going to be our description. We start with name first and we give it as name, so that's the ID, and then we have description, so we give the ID as description, and then we have a price, so we give the ID as price, and then we have rating, so we give the ID as rating, and then we have release date. We are just going to mark it as date, and we are going to hard code a value here. So the value is going to be, it starts with year, we give a date, we give the month after this and give the date, and then we have a time. Let's give the time as 22, 22, 22, right? And let's see if we have missed anything. So ID, name, description, release date, rating, and price. So we have everything, and so we can delete this. We need to create a button which should say save. So we create an invisible label so that it gives that much space to us, and then we create the button. The button is going to accept an object, and the text is going to be save. The width of this button should be 100 px, and when I press this button, I should go to the controller and execute the save method. So let's go ahead and quickly create these methods. So we are in the product.controller.js, and there is a create method, and there is a edit method, and there is a remove method, and followed by there is a save method, right? So our methods are ready. Now we are going to add this layout inside an element, which will also contain our matrix layout and O layout, and then we are going to return the element, right? Now if you want to look how it looks like, that's the way it looks like. So before we create the table and other things, there are a few things that you should know, which is a part of jQuery, and this will be really helpful. So I'm going to copy this URL, open up in my Firefox browser and hit enter. Then I go to inspect element with Firebug. Firebug is an extension of Firefox, and it's a brilliant extension, and I suggest you to install and use it, right? So this is a part of the console where you can write stuff, write your codes, and you can access these elements, and if anything needs to be printed, it will print over here. So let's start with the name. Now the first thing you will notice that the ID of this we have already declared over here, which is name. This is going to be the ID. And if you right click on this input box and click on inspect element with Firebug, it gives the ID as name, which is correct. Now, if you want to access this input box, this is the word that you need to use, which is the ID. So if I write like this is a jQuery convention. It starts with dollar, and because it's an ID, it will start with hash followed by the ID. And if you hit on run, it is going to give me the object of this input box. Don't worry about this object, it's not of much use, but let's look at a few of the functions. The first one is value function. So if you want to set anything here, a name, let's say, and click on run, it is going to set name, right? And if you want to clear this input box, you remove everything, pass an empty string, and hit on run, then it is going to remove the name from there, right? And similarly, that goes with the description. If you need to add something in the description, you can write that, and you see the description. And if you want to remove everything, just pass empty string, right? The second thing is about the form. Initially, a form will be hidden. So if you want to hide the form, we have an ID given to the form, which is form ID. So you can access the form by passing form ID, and you can hide the form just like that, right? And if you want to show the form, you can show it like this, right? And in this case, we are going to add a little bit of animation, so you can use slide up. What slide up does, it is going to slide up the form and mark it hidden, right? So if I hit on run, you see, and if you want to show the form, we can use slide down, and that's going to show. And if you want the animation to run a bit longer, then you can pass the time over here. Let's say we want the animation to run for 2 seconds. So this is going to accept a time in millisecond. So this is 2 seconds. And now if you click on run, it is going to take 2 seconds to remove that form. And now it will take 2 seconds to display that form, right? Now, there can be few scenarios where you want to uh, execute a particular script after the form is hidden or after the form shows up. So let's take a scenario. Now what I want to write this form is visible. So I want to print this on my console after my form gets visible on the screen. But the problem here is when I click on run, the form will display, and even before it has displayed the form completely, this is going to get printed over here. Let's test that. Everything fine. And you see that? So this gets printed first. Let's try that one again, one more time. Form is invisible. So the moment I hit on run, you'll see form is invisible, gets printed here, and then the form gets hidden. And then this gets printed. Let's try it one more time. Slide up, invisible, clear the console and click on run. The form is getting invisible and then it gets printed, right? So that was a basic idea of how to use jQuery slide up, slide down, and how to access elements and set the values. Uh, so now let's move into our Eclipse, and we are going to create a table over here. And before we create the table, let's create the service so that we can access the service and get the records inside the table. To create the service, we will use the onInit method, so uncomment it. If you are in Eclipse, you can uncomment by using Ctrl-Shift-C, and that is used to comment and uncomment. And if you are using Mac, then you can use Command, Shift, and C. That is going to comment, and the same is used to uncomment. So here we are going to create a model which is going to be new sap.ui.commons.odata.omodel, and here we are, this is oData model, and here we are going to pass the URL. So let's get into Chrome, copy this URL and paste it over here. Now sometimes even though the cross origin is marked as public, as star, there might be scenarios where you still won't be able to access this URL. So in that case, SAPUI5 already comes with a proxy. So to add the proxy, just delete this http:// and write proxy/http/. And this is going to wrap this URL inside a proxy. So if there are any changes on the server side, this will not get affected. Now we are going to print this inside our console so that we can see what we are getting, this object, right? So we are going to Firefox, open the console, hit refresh, SAPUI commons dot, this is model, and let's refresh it one more time. And this is the object that we are getting. If you click on that object, and if you scroll down and get into O headers, you will see that the data service version that the model is using is 2.0, but the service that we are using requires 3.0. So you will get an error if you try to access this service. So we have to change the service data service version from 2.0 to 3.0. So copy this and get into your Eclipse, and oModel dot, we are going to set the O headers. So you can write O headers. This is going to accept an object, and our data service version is going to be 3.0, and our max data service version is also going to be 3.0. So now that our versions are set, the headers are all fine. There is going to be S. So we go to our console, click on this, and if you get into O headers, it is going to be data service version as 3.0, and the max data service version is also 3.0. So now we can go ahead and set this model to be global, and we'll name the model as products. So sap.ui.getCore.set model, and you can write O model and give a key to it. In this case, we are going to give it as products. So it is going to set the model as products, and if we want to access the model, we can access it using this key. Let's head into our view and create a table quickly. And we are not going to make the table very fancy. It's just going to have 3 columns, and we'll give the ID, name, and description. So var o table is equal to new sap.ui. The table is a new library. So let's go ahead and add this library into our index.html SAPUI libraries. So, and then we get the table out of it, and we give an ID to this table ID, and this table is going to accept a visible row count, which is going to be 5, and editable false. So visible row count means that it is going to display 5 rows, and if you don't give this, your table might take the entire screen vertically. So we limit the table to 5 rows. It will have a scroll bar so that we can see the records inside it. And now we are going to add the columns. So oTable dot add column. Column is a part of the table, and this is going to accept an object, and we are going to have a label. So new sap.ui.commons.label, and we are going to give the text as ID. This is going to be the first column, and we want it to be visible, and we need to give a template. Template is where we do the data binding. So in this case, we'll give a text view, and this will contain a text, and we are going to bind this text view with our model, which is products model, and we need the field which is ID. So this is the way to bind a UI element with a data source, and we are going to copy this column, and we're going to add 2 more, and this is going to be name. So we are going to access the name field, and this is going to be description, and we are going to access the description field, and now we are going to bind the table with uh, the products model so that we get all the rows. So let's bind the rows first. oTable dot bind rows, and we are going to bind it with our products model, and we are going to access the products table, right? Let's see if everything is correct. New SAP template. This is going to be new sap.ui. These are all new objects, and now we are going to add the table inside this. Now if we go ahead and refresh this page, it is going to give us all the data and our form. So initially our form will be hidden. So to hide the form, we are going to the controller and on after rendering. So after it has rendered, we are going to hide the form, So we hide the form like this. Oops. Right. Now if you refresh the page, we don't see the form. And now we are going to implement this buttons so that we can do these operations. But we are going to do this in the next video. So if there was any part that was confusing or you didn't understand properly, then please drop me a comment and I'll try to explain it in the next video. Thanks for watching.